Raquel is a nervous system specialist who uses mind-body medicine to help people experience wholeness from within. She facilitates soul-aligned expansion in the nervous system for individuals and groups who know they have everything inside them they need and want to reclaim the missing piece. So thank you once again, Raquel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for offering to do this for us. And I will hand over. If there was a drum, I would roll it.
So, to clarify, what was just said there around, my fancy bio, is that the missing piece from, in my view, is the body, is the body's experience, that the body is always witnessing and always experiencing, and we don't always check in with our body and say, how was that for you, body? Like, I thought it was fine, but what was your experience of it? And particularly if the mind and the body have differing perspectives, and one wants to go one way and one wants to go the other, well, most of us will let our minds make that decision for us. And my view is that we should sometimes let the body have its way. And whilst it's not about letting the body have its way always, if it's a one-sided relationship and the mind has its way always, the body will actually start to let you know, and sometimes will let you know in ways that don't feel comfortable, because the body actually has that power far more than the mind, actually. So that for me is the missing piece. Okay. So the first question I want to ask is, and I want you to really, just think about this and, mentally put up your hand, or for those of you who are here, put up your hand. Do you find it hard to get in touch with your anger and to express your anger, or do you find that quite easy? So hard or easy? Hard, so, and easy?
I can get in touch with it, but I don't necessarily express it.
Yes, so you can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So you can feel it. And what does that feel like to you? Like, how does it, what is the feeling of being angry feel like?
So I feel it within me. So quite often within my gut, just churning, and then yes, my head spins as well, but I kind of feel it churning in my gut.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you get any temperature changes or anything like that?
I'm menopausal, so
you put everything down to menopause.
so I'm a menopause coach, actually. So yes, there are quite often, because it's stress. So stress will bring up heat changes. So yes, so right. Definitely. Yeah.
As soon as we get in touch with the emotion of anger and the sensations of anger, then we can actually get a heat change in the body. And lots of other things can happen as well. Mitli, do you have any experience of what it feels like in the body when you get angry?
I think I was born angry. I feel like anger has been a really present part of my whole experience, and that it's actually something. I feel like I have that sense that I fly to anger, like I fly to rage, like it's immediate, it's instant, and it's overpowering. And if you're in my presence when I hit it, it's and then I have that real, it's like a crash of, oh God, what did I say? What, it's like it almost feels like it takes over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's very true. When you're in the experience of, well, if you're in your survival nervous system, which means, you'd be in anger, you're not in your analytical brain. You're not in your higher brain. So it does actually kind of obliterate our sense of being here. And that's really what I want to talk about today, is that it obliterates our capacity to be present if we don't have a big enough container to hold our experience of anger. So what we actually need to be able to experience and express our anger safely is we need a container and we need capacity. Okay, so the container itself is building the body and actually building the body's capacity to hold any emotion, right? And well, let me throw it out to the few of you who are here. Do you have a sense of how you would build capacity to hold anger? I mean, to hold anything really. Can you kind of maybe say a framework of how you think that works?
I don't know, and perhaps in the context you're using, but reflecting, for me, circles have been a space in which I have been able through a range of feelings, emotions, activations, and through the witnessing of others as well, has really helped to reflect back where that is for me. How am I responding? How am I reacting? What's happening within me in this moment? And how can I meet that? So when I was thinking about, having been angry all the time, I was like, but actually circles have really helped me. I would call that building capacity, but I don't know if that's in the context.
I can explain how that fits in onto the framework. So I'll put it across. Does anybody else want to say what they think building capacity might involve or look like? Yeah.
For me, I don't find I get as angry anymore as what I used to. I used to be a bit late, fly off the handle at anything. But I've actually learned, I still do it, mainly with my teenage daughter. She can push me over the edge like that. But most other people can't, because I just drop into my heart.
Yes.
So I've learned a lot of techniques that stops me from being reactive in the moment. And basically, if I feel like I'm about to be like that, I kind of just take a big deep breath, and I use the symbol, which love, and I just stick it on my heart and connect into there. Doesn't work with my 16-year-old daughter though.
And that's partly, at least, that's because what you're talking about there is a really good container.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've built your container, which will have a certain amount, that's how you've built the capacity of your container. But there's something else, something more that could be built in terms of capacity to hold the little extra that's demanded of you by your daughter, right? So if I want to try and explain capacity in a really how the process of capacity building in a really simple way, I might say it's through experience. Okay, so whatever your definition when you're talking about circles or anything, or having been in that situation before time and time again, through experience you build capacity. There is one caveat to that. It needs to be through experience where you stay present. Okay, so flying off the handle, for example, let's say you get angry 100 times and you fly off the handle 100 times. There isn't actually any building of capacity going on there, because you've actually, and I'll show you a slide, but you've gone outside of your window of being able to stay present to your experience. And that means there's no capacity building happening. And the way that overlays in terms of learning how to be with our anger and how to process anger is that we actually have to stay present to it and not jump outside of, let's say, where we might be dissociated from it in any way. Okay, so what I'm talking about is sometimes called the window of tolerance, or also potentially called the window of regulation or the window of resilience. Okay, so window of regulation, I feel like, is a really nice neutral term, but I really wanted to give you all of them because they're actually all really relevant and valid, but I'd like to refer to it as the window of regulation. So this is what an individual's healthy nervous system, because every healthy nervous system may have a different gap in their window, but what we want to see there is that all experience is processed within the individual's normal range of tolerance. Okay, so that window of tolerance. or every experience is processed within the range that an individual can stay regulated. Now, that doesn't mean cool, calm, and collected when they're angry, but that means stay present. Okay, so if you are actually still regulated, you can be fiercely angry. You can be in a cold rage, but you would still be present and still able to regulate and still able to move. So being able to regulate means having some kind of capacity to move yourself from one state to another, and that your nervous system doesn't get stuck in any one particular state. So you'll see here, it's a really sort of simple little, graphic showing what's called the stress cycle, or the arousal and activation cycle. So you can see that, it goes up. Some sort of stressor or event causes a little arousal or activation in the nervous system, and in comes some sympathetic nervous system activity. Now you see how it doesn't go over the normal range. That would be a hyper reaction, right? So hyper arousal, that will be. So it stays within the range of resiliency or the range of regulation. Then it reaches a peak. And then at some point, the nervous system allows a release of that energy, and it will actually deactivate the energy and move into a parasympathetic response, which involves a kind of settling in the nervous system response. It doesn't mean that you feel settled, but you can actually, what I would call, ride the waves, the cascade of the up and the down. And I just want to caution one thing about this particular illustration, in that it doesn't show what I think is one of the most important things, is that after settling, there actually needs to be quite a long period of settling and then an integration period before there is another arousal and activation cycle. If we don't have this kind of extended settling and then an integration, we actually end up doing this inside the nervous system. And that is a recipe for chronic fatigue, burnout, chronic illness, and just misery, actually. So it's really important that there are, even if like you're in a flying rage, that there are little moments that the nervous system has learned through capacity building, which is through experience and repeated experience of things, that when I go up, I come down, and then there's kind of, even if you don't see it in this moment, there's a finding of a settling and an integration, and I'll go back up again. Or I'll have a few of these experiences, but I know that at the end of them, there's a settling and an integration. That's, when I say I know, I mean the nervous system knows. I'm talking the body's language here, because that's my most I'd like to channel your body. It's my most favorite thing to do, is channel the nervous system and what it would say to you. All right, so hopefully that makes a bit of sense. I think I've got a picture of when it goes out, just I'll come back to that. There. So, this is a trauma focused model, but then you can see how if you go outside of your window, as I said, it's hyper arousal. There's too much arousal to integrate, which means experience doesn't get integrated, which means that you leave fragments of memories, images, body behaviors, meaning, emotions can all be kind of not brought into the whole experience of what you've just had, and that would include anger, right? And sometimes what happens is you can have so much arousal that we actually drop into hypoarousal. So this diagram's not exactly accurate, because it says there's too little arousal to integrate. There is too little arousal to integrate, but prior to the too little arousal is extreme arousal, like way too much for the individual's nervous system to manage. They go beyond a sympathetic response and kind of just fly out into dissociation and then freeze. And then it drops down into that hypoarousal state where there is too little arousal to integrate. It's a bit, like it's nuanced. I wouldn't say it's necessarily complex, but it's nuanced, and it's not entirely as linear as people like to kind of make out the model to be. So, you know, just to summarize, what we can say is that being within our own window of regulation indicates that we are in the ideal state of emotional response, and we can then absorb and respond to information effectively. If we're above the window, we experience hyperarousal, which is often associated with the fight and flight response. And if we're below the window, we experience hypoarousal, which is often associated with freeze, playing dead, submission, people pleasing, and dissociation. Okay, so I'm going to mostly focus on the expression of anger, but we do need to hold in our awareness that there are people who can't get in touch with their anger, and that's because it's outside of their window of tolerance. It's outside of what they can stay present to. Now, Gabor Mate wrote a fantastic book called When the Body Says No, and in it he was talking about, you know, his patients, because he was a GP in Vancouver, I think, for a while. And, you know, he was talking about his cancer patients, and, you know, one of his, you know, patients said, "Oh, I never get angry. I grow a tumor instead." Okay. So, you know, the consequences of, you know, not expressing your anger, you know, it might be laughingly expressed there, but I think there's some truth that, you know, underlies that. And, you know, we have this whole socialized idea about, you know, anger and how we should, you know, be with it, and particularly as women, right? But Robert Kennedy even said, you know, he made it's almost like making a, you know, like a big, you know, it's like what's the word I'm looking for, a virtue out of don't get mad, get even. Okay. Now, the consequences of that for the nervous system, like it's just stewing in the juices of anger, when in fact anger is a primal emotion that is actually just designed to move and flow through us. So it is essential human emotion, just like happiness, disgust, surprise, and fear. It is just the same as all of that. It is biologically natural and built into our nervous system to experience. However, only anger and fear are wired into our survival nervous system. So, you know, I'm going to sort of tease this out a little bit and say things like happiness, disgust, and surprise are wired into our social engagement nervous system. Now, they're actually the same nervous system. However, they're different branches and they have different functions. So it's easier actually to refer to them as, certainly in this presentation, as two separate nervous systems, because then we can get really clear. There's the social engagement nervous system and the survival nervous system. As I said, they are actually all the same thing, but it's really much easier to conceptualize it if we think about the survival nervous system response and the social engagement nervous system response. Okay, just 2 new words. All right. Anger helps us identify when we feel unsafe, violated, and under threat. Okay, so I'm sure pretty much everybody here understands that anger lets us know about our boundaries, lets us know about our no and what we don't like and what we don't want, and you know, and it really gives us clues as to when we feel unsafe and under threat. Okay, but the reason it does that is because it's wired into our survival nervous system. Okay. So, you know, I've talked about potential cancers or tumours being a consequence of holding in anger. When we suppress our anger, we stuff it down, which cues our body to shut down our life force energy, which can eventually lead to mental distress, something often like depression, but some people experience anxiety as well. So in the suppressing of their essential response, you know, expression and response, anxiety can pop up, or the same if you're more inclined for depression can pop up. It's often depression, but not always. Physically, when we send a message to our life force to suppress its expression, this is the scary and quite concerning part. Our body will slow down, and it will even shut down. And it could result in physiological processes like elimination and digestion malfunctioning, not functioning as they should. And over time, that can lead to chronic illness. Okay, so that can be the trajectory of holding in and suppressing a primal urge and emotion like anger. I want to jump into what I want to give you a tiny piece of understanding is that in order to be able to feel our anger, we have to be able to feel our body. Okay, now some people don't manage that as well as other people. Okay, so I'm going to help you build capacity to feel your anger by taking you through stages of helping you feel your body. Okay, so we do just start simply by noticing what it's like to be sitting on the chair that you're on, or sitting on the floor or the bed, or whatever the surface you're sitting on. Just feel your buttocks on that surface and how the surface is supporting you. All right, how they just seem to sit in the chair or the floor or the cushion. Just see if you can notice anything about the buttocks, and then you might find that your attention or awareness moves. In my case, it kind of moved to my pelvic bowl, and then it moved to my lumbar spine, and so that I'm very much aware of, kind of like it's almost like a 3D. So now I've got my belly and my belly button in. Just see what you're able to hold in your awareness without skipping around your body, because yes, we could all start noticing our arms and our feet and all that stuff, but see if you could actually stay with just that area that I've described already. And it might not be as much as that, but if it isn't as much as all those things, just stay with the things that feels the easiest to notice. So if it's easiest just to notice your back against the chair or your buttocks in the chair, just notice that. Because what we don't want to do is push our neural pathways to notice more than actually it has capacity for. It actually, it seems like a really simple and prosaic thing, but because our brains are not constantly educated to take in information from our body all the time, we're a bit unpracticed in this. And it's just like going to the gym and building, muscle strength or cardio, right? That you actually just need a little bit of time to build even these really simple skills of staying present and with the awareness of what you're able to stay aware to. And while you're doing that, just notice if you are present, or if you kind of start to get a little floaty, or if your concentration wants to start moving, which is, it's fine. But for this exercise, we're trying to actually build a little capacity to stay with our awareness of just this area. Be another exercise to actually, take in all sensations, right? This is just something else that we're doing. Fine to do both, but just at a different time. And then notice if something changes in your body. You might notice some change in your breathing while you're staying with this. You might notice kind of like a dropping into the chair rather than like you may have felt almost like you were on the chair before, and now you've kind of sunk into the chair. Right, the body sort of might, and it might not. You might still actually be perched. Right, there might actually, you now start to actually become aware of a bracing that's, you know, like underneath layers and layers and layers of, oh, I'm fine here. There's actually a bracing. Right, that's the new awareness that starts to emerge when we actually just stay present to our body and not, you know, ask anything of it. We let it show us. Right, you might find that your body starts to release or let down or let go. If it does, just track it. Don't try and force or change your breath or change what's doing. You just get to track it. And what happens when we track, let's say, a relaxation response, is that more of that starts happening throughout the body. It's just kind of one of those things that happens, you know. It's a bit like, you know, what you focus on grows. So the body and mind do the same sort of thing when it just comes to signs of regulation. If you track signs of regulation in your body and your nervous system, your body and your mind and your nervous system will just continue to find more signs of regulation. Okay, which is slightly different to relaxation, but it's close enough for us to use that term. Regulation, as I said, means that we're actually more easily able to move from one state to another and hold our presence while doing it. Relaxation is really more of just one state, okay, but they're a similar state. So now we're going to actually do, now that we're possibly in a more regulated state. So this is the optimum place with which to actually start to do some anger exercises, okay? So I'm just checking the time. Good, we've got heaps of time. So the first one, I'm going to build you up again. I'm going to build your capacity in your nervous system to hold, and you're going to notice, because at some point you're going to say, almost like I'm out, you know, like that's enough for me. And everybody's going to be different. Okay, so the idea is, it's called titration, and it's a trauma-informed word. Okay, and it literally, it's also a term in chemistry, and it literally means drop by drop. Okay, and so when you approach working with anything, not just trauma, from a titrated perspective, you get a chance to build capacity step by step, drop by drop, right? Which that means then that you expand your container at the same time, and the work holds. It doesn't eventually go, oh, well, I did that big expansion piece, but I didn't have a container to hold it. So, you know, so the drop by drop by drop by drop by drop actually builds this integrous container that can hold more, and it can hold all this stuff. And that means you can be present to it. Okay, like it sounds fancy, but it's literally so that you can be present to it, and that it doesn't feel overwhelming to the body. So there's this little exercise called the VU, and I think Sobia knows it. I think it's a really good foundation, but I'm actually going to just do a little bit of a variation on it to help us feel our anger. Now, one thing I'm going to say to you is that you don't need to recall any situation which is making you angry. This is allowing the body to have a kind of say. So if it's in the body, it gets to express it. And you don't have to know the story behind it. You don't have to imagine the person who's driving you nuts. You don't have to, you know, visualize the situation. You don't have to recall it. You don't have to take yourself back into the past. and bring those things into the present. You don't have to do anything like that. If you have difficulty getting in touch with anger, that would be very tempting. But I'm just going to say for this exercise, no, just let your body have its say. Okay? So it's called the VOO, which is VOO, is what I'm saying there, VOO. And it sort of sounds a bit like the tone Buddhist monks make, a little bit, and a lot like the sound of a foghorn. Okay, right? So it's not meant to actually sound pretty or even in tune, right? It's just not. You know, if you try and make it sound pretty, it sounds like an om, but actually we're trying to kind of get to something more visceral, okay? Because then that's why we use the sound, because it creates a vibration in our viscera, which is throat all the way down into our intestines. And depending on how much freedom and space you have in your inside of your body, it can travel all the way down and like warm and put fire in your belly. Most people will tend to feel it first time, if at all, here. Often second time it'll get to their heart. So it takes practice, because it's about creating spaces in your body to be able to, for the vibration to be able to move. And if you've got trauma, it won't let that much vibration down into your body, because our organs is what holds most of our trauma. Okay, so if you at any point, if you feel uncomfortable with this or it feels too much, stop. But I will talk you through ways of, reducing it. So you can actually just do it for a short time. All right. So I'm going to talk you through it. I'm going to show you how it's done, and then I'm going to talk you through it. Okay. So what I do is I always take a cleansing breath first. And then now, you might not have realized that, but I ended that before the end of my breath. And that was deliberate, because we don't have to take it all the way to the end of our breath. Plenty of vibration was happening in my body. And that's the purpose of it. It's not to do it on an extended breath. I could have done it at half that. Okay, so if you notice anything kind of moving, just stop, and you'll still be able to join in the next time. If you do too much vibration, you will only be able to do it once, whereas, I'll be able to show you, we'll be able to do it 3 times for most of us, and we'll feel okay. Okay, so I'll talk you through it. As you say, you keep your mics off so that nobody needs to hear you, but you can see what I mean. It's not a great sound, right? The idea is to go as low as you can, and because that's what creates vibration. Okay, so you take your cleansing breath, and then when you're ready, inhale through the nose and exhale saying VOO. I'm having a little bit of a giggle because this time round, Zoom decided I was playing music. The last time round, it didn't think it was quite so melodic. What I noticed about my experience, excuse me, that time round, was that I just had more capacity in my breath, and there was actually, I was able to circulate more of that air around. So it felt a little bit more powerful, actually, and I felt like I had a lot more air in my body, right? So when you guys come up for your second time, see if there's any difference, right? That's what we're kind of just tracking difference, okay? So again, you might not need to do a cleansing breath, but you can. Might be a smaller one because you've already done one. And then inhale through the nose. You go as long as you want, but you don't have to go to the end of your breath. And I really want to show that to you. And I feel there's a lot of warmth happening now in my viscera. I can feel it right through my throat, right down to my belly. I can feel all the warmth. I actually can feel it right down into my inner thighs. I can feel the warmth, even though theoretically your breath doesn't go there. But the spaces in your body start to open up, which means that more blood flow can happen. Right? So it seems really simple, but it's actually incredibly powerful because it helps us connect to, or it helps our body start to work better. Okay, and I can feel now heat in my elbows and in my arms, and that leads me and said, just as soon as I did that, okay, oh my God, as soon as I did that, I have got goosebumps in my belly, and now they're starting to travel down my legs. Just try it. Like it might not have any effect on you whatsoever, but this is let's say these are the equipment that we use to express our aggression, our anger. It's our arms, okay? More our arms than our legs. So if we were to say, our arms are connected to the fight, which is the anger, and our legs are more connected to the flight, okay, which is more fear, okay? Now, obviously you can kick in anger and stuff, so, there's a lot, there are blurred lines. But the arms in particular are very clearly connected to our fight response. So what happened for me there is as soon as I closed my fists, I didn't really even clench them, my body started to discharge some arousal energy, okay? So it might not even be anger. It might be, frustration. It might be irritation. Which it probably would be knowing me, like, all of these kinds of just emotions that I can't, socially acceptably easily express. I don't have to go and punch a pillow or, bash something. I can actually just, if I do the building blocks and get present with my body first, know about my window, and just do some really simple, small exercises, I've already got a release happening in my body. Okay? Did any of you feel something the second time around at all? Because if you haven't, we'll do it a third time. Because did you feel the vibration come down at all into your body? Yeah? A little bit? Yeah? Yeah, let's do it a third time. Oh no, quite a lot, you said, yeah? Yeah, right. We'll do it a third time. And what I want you to do is just track how present you still are, okay? Because the reason I say this, because I'll say it for the recording as well, is that what can happen is that you can get a little bit lightheaded. And that tells us that you're starting to hit the edge of your window. Now, all that means is that you just wait, you stop, and you just take longer to settle. Remember how I was saying about the settling and integration? So if you start to actually get a very slight lightheaded feeling, or just some kind of weirdness around the eyes, that's how I might suggest you track it, because noticing that you've gone lightheaded might be quite hard to notice that, but you might notice that something weird's happening with your eyes, or something weird's happening with your eyebrow. So if you notice that, or just track that, assume that that's actually a little bit an indicator that you're on the edge of your window. All right? So just keep that in mind as you do this another time, because some of you may experience that. Those of you who have a bigger capacity to hold emotion or anger, probably won't feel it like that. But if your window is small, and I want to say is that your window changes daily, right? It's not the same every day. So, you know, I've absolutely felt those moments of dizziness and, you know, little head wobbles. I'm like, oh, there it is. That's actually fun. But, you know, like it totally, you know, that's where your capacity is in that day, right? So let's see again. That's a cleansing breath. And then in through the nose and a So that's a little optional extra that you can do. And we'll do that again because I want to show you how to actually, you want to open the jaws a little bit. It's not so much about making sound. So you can go as you do the boo, if you feel you've got capacity for that. So I can feel this like so much heat now happening in my body, lots of kind of little tingles, not goosebumps this time, just sort of like all the kind of little, everything's coming alive in a certain way. Okay, now this means that we're building the capacity to feel and express our anger. Okay, and that's actually just as important as being able to express our anger. Okay. So let's go on to a technique that you can use to be able to really express your anger in, you know, around a situation or a circumstance. And it doesn't have to be in the moment, but it might be something that happened yesterday or today, or it might be many years ago. Okay, so it's you can peg it anywhere if you like. So the idea is to be able to follow your body's impulse to complete the incomplete, let's say thwarted expression of anger. So this is what happens to us a lot, right? That we want to express it, but we hold ourselves back in some ways. Like, oh no, I can't say that, or, you know, people won't like me anymore, or it's not the right time, or my partner's pulling me out of the room, or, you know, whatever. Like, and you need to say something, or you need, and that's because all of this anger sensation is arising in the body, right? It's an arousal experience arising in the body. So there's actually a thwarted response from a nervous system perspective. Now, sometimes if we ask our body, if we sit with our body, and at this point what we can do, we're not recalling the experience, but we're really allowing ourselves to get in touch with the experience of what is happening in the body around that experience. So, you know, feel the irritation, or feel your outrage, feel the wound of injustice, and how much you want to, right? And there's an impulse, right? So hear what I said, how much you want to, right? There's an impulse. Okay, now that impulse for me was, right, something like that, right? So that's what I wanted to do. What I want to do is teach you how to actually do it in a way that will actually help move it through the body. So you could do it that way, but that's not actually going to really help the body sense that that experience has been completed. All right, that it can just let go of that experience now because it has completed its response to the situation. What we actually want to do is come first in awareness of the impulse to, right? And so what I'm aware of is that, oh, the impulse begins with wanting to lift my arm. So I'm not talking about the emotional impulse. I'm talking about the physical impulse, right? So I was able to notice that what I wanted to do was that. And now I'm coming into, oh, so in order to do that, what's involved is raising my arms. So what do I notice? I notice my elbow and I notice my shoulder joint, right? And I notice a lifting happening up in my shoulder, and my elbow is kind of following suit, but it's really, I can notice it's coming from here and coming really from my collarbone as well, right? The whole lifting is happening from here, right? And now I'm noticing, so now I'm noticing as my elbow lifts, I can feel a little shimmering happening on my shoulder blades. So now I'm present to what's going on in my body. I don't have to like micro do everything, but now I'm here. Now I'm with my body, right? You get that? Now I'm with my body. We're doing this together. It's totally different than just me raising my hand and arm and, you know, banging it into my fist, right? I'm with my body now. So now I can raise my arm and feel everything, just everything coordinate and organize. Everything organized to raise my arm. And it's all like my neck is elongated, my head, that kind of standing up in the back of my head. My body's moved a little forward. Like now I'm kind of with everything. I can feel my whole experience. I don't have to name every single minutiae, but we're all together. And now I can do the same on the downward. So what I noticed is instantly my fist clenched again, tightened, right? I was thinking about going down. My body knows, no, we got to clench our fists first, right? And all of this discharge is happening again in my legs, right? Little pins and needles going ripples. That's a discharge that's happening of energy. Okay, can look differently for different people, but that's a really clear discharge, right? So my fist has clenched, and now I'm ready to come down. And I want to actually, so now I can feel my bicep really tightening, right? And now I can feel it tightening in my forearm along that bone. And I don't have to do it fast, right? Something really happens when you really stay present to it, and you might want to do it, you know, again, just to kind of like say that's a dress rehearsal and kind of, right? Yeah, so there's then something more comes out of the body, but it's about staying slow, but tracking the impulse that wants to happen in your body, not what you think needs to happen. So sometimes the body's impulse is not obviously congruent with, you know, what's happened, you know. Actually, the body might want to start with a kick, right? And you know, and yet the situation involved pushing, right? Because that's the way the body needs to organize itself, because kicking really starts the spine moving, right? It's got a lot more organization in the spine than pushing. So sometimes if a lot of the spine needs to get involved, your feet actually might start to get involved first. Just follow the impulse of your body. And if you don't know, just be curious. Just go, oh, well, what happened? Or, you know, you can, like I did, was talk it through, and suddenly I was like, right, it was just there. So do you guys want to have a go at that? You want to have a try at that? See if you can recall, you know, see if you can actually be present to something now. So basically kind of notice what's going on in your body in terms of frustration or anger or irritation or outrage or injustice or whatever it is. You don't even have to name it. You just need to feel what's going on now in your system. Just if you can drop into that feeling, because it's sitting there waiting for you to meet it. And then just see if you can notice if there's any impulse in your body, and just say, be curious. You know, it could be a movement in your hands. It could be a tightening around yourself, right? There could be lots of different, you know, movements. It might not be self-protective movements at first, which is ultimately what we're tracking with regards to anger. I'm just giving you some time to kind of do a little bit of an experiment, because it's a personal process. And obviously each individual nervous system has is holding individual experience, and also has a particular idea about how to complete that experience. So, you know, if I were working with you, for example, we would kind of track that together, and I would kind of help you notice what's happening. Now, there are a couple of people here, but one's in the dark and one's a long way from the camera, so I can't really track that for you. So I'm going to really ask you that you kind of really got to track that for yourself. Okay, and those of you who are listening to the recording, for obvious reasons, I can't track you. Right. But that's what I do. Like, you know, I generally will point out to somebody, oh, did you notice that your shoulder started to move? Or did you notice that you moved your head to the left? Or, you know, and that helps people sometimes orient to what's really going on in their body, right? Because again, if we're not practiced at doing this, it's new. Okay. You know, my body and I we already have a dialogue, and although everything is a surprise to me because I don't know what's going to happen, we actually have a pretty good relationship, so that it's going to talk to me, but everything still is a surprise, which is why I love this work so much, because I'm constantly surprised. Like, I never know anything about what's going to happen, including to me. Right? So I will. So there is one more process I can teach you, but I'll just check in with whoever's here. Do you want to share anything of that or ask any questions about that process?
I sort of feel like I have a question, but I don't know what it is. So what I felt was this really intense, my right hand playing with my left thumb, like really, even like really
Picking at it.
Picking at it. But also this really strong desire to turn away, to turn to the right, like really full, but not being able to. Like I'm stuck.
Yeah, right.
And the kind of sense, my left hip, which is where I have pain, often feels locked, and it feels like, I feel really kind of, I want to run away from you, and I can't move. It's like stuck. It's quite intense.
So what I might invite you to do, Mitlay, is just become aware of your other side, which is your left side, right? Just become aware of the space on your left, because it was the right you wanted to turn to but couldn't, right?
Yeah.
But just become aware of the space on your left and notice how that is to become aware of that.
Yeah, I find I can't, it feels really empty, like there's nothing there.
Yes. And if I suggest to you, don't do this, but I'll just ask you, how would it be to move to the left? What's your kind of whole body, if possible, response?
It's like, no, I can't move that way. Really?
Yeah. So you're having trouble moving to the right, but it's actually really on the left, isn't it? The movement, there's something here that's actually really affecting your whole field.
Yeah, I don't even want to look, like I don't even want to take my eyes up. It's quite odd.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to breathe.
Yes. And so what we might say is that in that process of you becoming quite clear now that the left is kind of not, you know, not a place you want to go, you actually started to move a little bit to the right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily whole body, but your head and your neck has started to organize to the right.
Yeah, yeah, I can feel
So
that.
now just kind of feel into that and notice, okay, how is it to be kind of a little bit more aware of the right in this moment?
Yeah, it feels sort of more welcoming.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, and there you go.
slow,
So you're,
it's starting, like just
yes.
taking it slowly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just let the body go with that, be as slow as it needs to be. Stop when you feel something strange or different, right? So I don't know what it would be, but stop when you feel like you've moved into a new place or a strange place. Or go with the flow if there is a flow of movement.
Well, it's like I'm rocking now, like backwards and forwards. It's almost like that's, you know, like you're ratcheting something up. It feels like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, I would agree. I can say, and you are right. The rocking is getting bigger. My body is off in resonance with yours.
Yeah.
So we're doing this together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and your nervous system would have registered that it's not alone. Right.
Yeah, and now there's a strong desire to move my whole body that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and if that feels okay, follow that. Yeah, just follow that around.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there was a exhale then, is that right?
I really want to breathe deeply and release.
Yeah, right, exactly. So be with that breath and exactly as it wants to be.
Okay, that feels like, yeah, like it's ready to come back.
Yeah, that's right. And so come back in your own time, in your own way. And I'm just going to get you to check in. How are your arms and legs? Because I can't see them, but how are they doing?
They feel okay. My left foot is tucked behind my right foot, almost like a pivot.
Right.
And my left hand is actually holding the chair, but gently, not gripping, but
right.
like support.
Yeah.
But there's a real need as well to look at everything in this space. Like my eyes are all over the place. Like,
yep.
really
I'll tell you. I'll explain why in a moment. Okay. Yeah. You really take in everything that you see. In a way that feels comfortable, right? It's not about kind of like absorbing the objects in a hypervigilant way, but just noticing exactly where you are and whatever is in your space. Yeah.
And I'm starting to feel emotional.
Yes. Yeah. So you're getting more present, like you're physiologically getting more present.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite emotional.
Yeah. 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 So as you look around, you're using your architecture of safety.
Okay.
Right. Your whole body is orienting to noticing whether it's safe or there's a threat, right? It's the whole architecture of safety is in the body of looking around. And when you've been unsafe, a lot of those processes get a bit locked up.
Mm.
So you might have not been looking around in quite the same free way as you have done, prior to feeling unsafe.
Mm.
Right? Even if it's just like a day or two, right? We're not talking about, months, but there'll be just a lack of freedom in the body's ability to orient to safety. And so what we just did here is your body restored that to itself.
Amazing.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just really small, simple things can often be, the body likes boring, prosaic, ordinary, everyday things. It doesn't need, you know, the witticisms of the mind or anything like that. It just needs presence and a bit of time.
Yeah.
Right? So you can just let your body kind of like just take in the effects of being able to do its thing that could find itself its way to safety.
Now it wants to look left.
Check out the left.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do it. We've got time and we don't need to go anywhere.
Thank you. That's really interesting. That's almost like, feels like that sensation when you look under the bed and there's nothing there.
Yes.
Like I just needed to check and actually there's nothing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that really helps the body restore, just that's resiliency, regulation, the titration, the presence, the being with, like all of those things just in that really simple, letting the body tell you how it kind of, or like what it's up for, and you just kind of have to guide the process by slowing it down and staying present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm.